everybody? Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show. Yes, I am back and loving it. Oh, it's so good to be back. Latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show coming at you as I love to do every weekday over the airways of ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Number to call up as always is 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. The Stephen A. Smith Show is being brought to you by mycomputercareer.edu. Training for a better life. Time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. Let me tell y'all something. I knew I had to get back on the airwaves. I knew I had to get back on the airwaves when I was in the islands. My man JC looking at me. I was in the islands at an undisclosed tropical location. I was in the islands, and I had my Sirius XM on because we are on Sirius XM Channel 80, not just ESPN Radio 250 plus markets across the United States of America, not just on ESPN News National Television. We're also on Sirius XM Channel 80, and I, looking forward to listening to my show. Whether it's Will Kane, whether it's Dan Grassa, whether it's Dave Rothenberg, I'm looking forward to it. And this past Friday, I tuned into my radio show, Jonathan Winthrop, my producer extraordinaire, that I just mentioned, had the audacity, the temerity to put that lifelong, diehard Mets fan on hosting my radio show, Don Juan LaGreca. I said, what? What? Don Juan is hosting my show? And then I came to my senses. Number one, I love Don Juan. He's my man. Number two, he's a damn good radio host. I don't know too many people. Not that Stephen A. is associated with hockey, because I am not, because the only thing I know about hockey is that it played on ice and the puck is black. I don't know a damn thing about hockey, okay? And don't want to know. But he's a damn good radio host across the board. And number three, his Mets have been amazing. Now, I believe, if I remember correctly, I was reading from an article in the New York Daily News a few days ago, and Mr. Bob Raceman pointed out how there were a whole bunch of people out there that were dogging the Mets and talking about Mickey Callaway needed to go, and Van Wagenen and these boys are just pathetic, and the Mets are trash and ain't going anywhere, and now you can't find them. You can't find these people that said that. Well, Mr. Bob Raceman, you found me, because I'm here to tell you. You're absolutely right with what you said. And the New York Mets, not that I'm going to spend a whole bunch of time on baseball because I got a whole bunch of football stuff to get into, but I got to say this. The Mets have been a sensational story. I know they lost 7-4 yesterday to the Nationals, courtesy of Jacob deGrom not having his best start. It was an abbreviated start for just 5 innings. All right, had to use 6 relief pitches for crying out loud. Edwin Diaz as your closer, that's a subject for another day, but it definitely and damn sure needs to be revisited because it ain't happening. But the New York Mets, even though my Yankees are still in first place and winning, the New York Mets, I can make an argument, ladies and gentlemen, it's been the best story in baseball. Even with yesterday's loss, they've still won 15 of their last 17. They're still in the hunt for the wild card spot, just a game out. Okay? Nationals are leading that race. St. Louis Cardinals not far behind. The Brewers are right there. The New York Mets. What a sensational story. And it's something to be said. You know, everybody talk about moves that needed to be made. Get rid of Noah Syndergaard. Get rid of somebody. Do something to buffer your squad because this ain't going to get it done. Why you get this guy Marcus Stroman for? What the hell you needed him for? You ain't going anywhere. Blah, blah, blah. But guess what? With the Mets pitching, if they get any production with their bats, which is what they've been giving, the New York Mets, I believe, have been the best story in baseball pretty much over the last 3 weeks. And as a result of that reality, it was certainly apropos that the great Don Juan LaGreca would be hosting the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio and ESPN News. John, before I move on, John, I must ask you a question. Did he look good? Was his hair slicked back? Was he sharp? Did he show up? I didn't want him looking all haggarty and all that stuff. Did he look good? I call him Don Juan. Did he live up to my reputation calling him Don Juan LaGreca? Did he? Yes or no? Very important to me. Because I have made a legitimate argument that I believe that Don Juan LaGreca has had very, very fine moments with the hair slicked back, looking good and stuff like that. And then there are times that he believes just because he's married with an absolutely wonderful, wonderful, beautiful wife, that he can just let it go. And I can't let that happen. And by the way, while I'm on the subject of Don Juan LaGreca, he is a partner to my brother, Michael K. I'm thinking about you. I love you. I miss you. Get healthy, my man. Get that voice right and get back to work, my man. The airwaves need you, my brother. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. You're listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Now, I've been gone for a little while. And I got some things on my mind, right? By the way, my rotator cuff is still, it's not torn anymore, but I'm still rehabilitating. But the doctor has given me instructions. He's given me permission where I'm on the air. I don't have to wear the brace while I'm on the air. Because as you know, I'm usually suited down, GQ, that kind of thing. And as a result of that, having the brace on me, it looks kind of tacky on the air. But, when I was injured the first few weeks, I had to wear it. Now I can take it off when I'm on the air. But when I'm walking, I have to have the brace on. Now let me get back to the subject of sports. In all seriousness, I have to touch on something that's going to make some people uncomfortable. I must say to you, I don't give a damn. These kind of things need to be said, and I'm going to say it. This Antonio Brown situation with the National Football League over his helmet. Him being so appalled that he's being asked to do away with a helmet he's been playing with his entire career. Him being fixated on playing with that helmet, so much so that he's threatened to retire, etc., according to our very own Adam Schefter and others, saying he won't play without the helmet. He's challenged the NFL on this issue. He's hired an attorney on this issue. A decision from an arbitrator is expected this week regarding the issue. And I must say to you, ladies and gentlemen, what my hope beyond hope is. I hope that the NFL calls Antonio Brown's bluff. I wish they came out with a statement that said, I dare your behind to retire. You're a new fool. Hell you think you are. Must have lost your damn mind. I hope somebody tell him that. Because the reality of the situation is, he is on this particular situation. I am not going to be one of those that uses this as a license to piggyback over all things Antonio Brown, the Facebook post in the locker room in the midst of Mike Tomlin after a playoff victory over the Kansas City Chiefs in their locker room, literally imploring guys not to be on social media, but Antonio Brown's got his coach on social media. I'm not going to go I'm not going to go into all of that. I'm not going to go into the distractions that he caused last year, at least played a part in causing with his beef with the Steelers because he wanted a new contract and money, or his desire to get out of Pittsburgh and not play alongside Big Ben Roethlisberger anymore. I'm not going to get in any of that. I'm not going to get caught up in that. Instead, what I'm going to say to y'all is simply this. This particular situation, I'm only talking about this, is so petty, is so egregious in terms of Antonio Brown's behavior. I wish the NFL came out with a public statement and said, we dare you to retire. Go ahead. Who the hell do you think you are? This is the NFL. You better kick rock, sit your behind down, get your behind back to Oakland and get on that damn football field. That's what I wish somebody would tell them. You see, ladies and gentlemen, I have a problem. And guess what? I'll be the first to say it. I got a problem most white people cannot say. You can't say it. I can. And that is this. When you look at an Antonio Brown and you see the way he's acting and the spectacle that he's made of this, you know what the NFL owners are saying? You see why we got to be careful about who we give money to? We can't give money to those dudes. You figure out what word would be appropriate to attach to Antonio Brown when you say those dudes. You bust your way out of Pittsburgh. The Oakland Raiders give up a third and a fifth for you. They pay you an additional $30 million in guaranteed money. And you threatening to retire because of a helmet that's no longer approved by the National Football League. 2,000 plus players are playing in the NFL. 2,000, ladies and gentlemen. 2,000. Not one single player has threatened action against the NFL or has threatened to retire but you. 2,000 plus players. You are the only one. The only one that's acting like this. And you want to know why people got a problem with you? See, you, white America, zip it. Shut up. Don't say nothing. I don't want you incriminated. I don't want you incriminated. This is purely a black thing that I'm bringing up. It's not all. It's not most. Damn it, it ain't even a few. It's the isolated ones that you got to stand up and raise up and highlight and knock down so people don't think everybody's like that. You have an obligation. You signed a contract. Part of that contract is to capitulate to the rules of the National Football League. Ladies and gentlemen, by the way, Antonio Brown, I have it on good authority from the NFL and the NFLPA. Antonio Brown has literally 30 plus other helmet options. 30 plus. 30 plus. He's got 30 plus football options, football helmet options. Oh, point number 2. Did you know that the NFL has been telling the players for the last 5 years that this was coming down the pike? At this particular moment in time, and they had a 5-year window to prepare themselves to make this transition to wearing a new helmet? Did you know that? Did you know that Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, both complaining about the helmet, both find it uncomfortable, both don't like it? Neither of them have threatened to retire. Neither of them have threatened not to show up to work. Neither of them have threatened to forfeit their money. They ain't sitting on TV, black as hell with a blonde mustache, talking about they don't need the sport they created a ruckus in just to collect the damn $30 million extra that they got. Now, some people look at it and go like this, damn, Stephen A., why you got to be like that? Why you got to go off like that? It's very, very simple. Because if you don't, you provide tacit approval, which could potentially encourage others to act like idiots, compromising what you bust your tail and worked your life for to accomplish because of this issue. I could bring up the fact that the old helmet he was wearing didn't prevent him from being concussed and nearly decapitated by Vontaze Burfict a couple of years ago in the playoffs against the Cincinnati Bengals, but that's neither here nor there. My bigger point in making the point that I'm making is that when you act and you conduct yourself this way, it dilutes the potency of a player argument against executives or owners, particularly within a collective bargaining negotiation coming down the pike. It ain't just about you. It's about something more than that. I have no problem with Antonio Brown not liking the helmet. I have no problem with him making a big fuss over it because he wants to do everything he can to wear the helmet But when you threaten to retire, when you threaten to pass up $30 million over it, first of all, you lying. You're lying. Let's get that out the way. But secondly, and more importantly, it's got to be one of the stupidest lies I've ever heard. You take diva and prima donna and elevate it to astronomical proportions when you do something like this. It makes no sense. None. And then this damn John Gruden, I shouldn't say that because I actually like John Gruden. And I respect the hell out of him. His football acumen is off the charts. But I got a problem with the position that he took in supporting Antonio Brown. What the hell you bringing up his feet for? Anybody that saw them nasty, crusty-looking feet that he put on Instagram, making people throw up their cereal or their food for crying out loud, we all know and understand why he couldn't practice. I mean, damn, it's amazing he could walk with feet that look like that. What did he went into some cryptotherapy treatment in France? I mean, is that what he did? And it messed up his feet? Really, really bad? Okay. No problem. Ain't nobody excoriating Antonio Brown over that. Nobody's doing that. Nobody's doing it. Nobody's saying anything about that. So for John Gruden to even bring that up, nonsense. Nobody was talking about that. But then they sit up there and to take into account this helmet issue. It's a personal issue with him. We're going to stand by him. That's ridiculous. You don't have to stand by stuff that's ridiculous and idiotic just because he's your guy. You can sit up there and say, look, bro, we need you. Now, those of y'all that are sitting out there, oh, it's just practice, it's just preseason, blah, blah, blah. Excuse me, there's a chemistry that needs to be developed between you and Derek Carr. What other receivers you have if you're the Oakland Raiders? I don't know them. Hunter Renfrow. I mean, come on. These are good receivers, but come on. Antonio Brown is all world. He's a superstar. He's one of the best to ever play this position. You got your money, and you causing this kind of ruckus? It's inexcusable. We could sit up there and we could say what we want, and some people could decry the position that Colin Kaepernick took, but damn it, it was a principled cause. Civil rights, civil liberties, being a human being. It's not in violation of any rules and regulations that the NFL handed down. You, Antonio Brown, you have no leg to stand on this. You have no case in this. None. Absolutely, positively none. I don't want to hear it. I'm so sick of this nonsense. This is just ridiculous. Just a damn new fool. Ain't nobody saying it, so I'm going to say it. You're going to walk away from 30 million. You lying your butt off. The hell with it. I need stuff, John. John, I'm sorry. I need it for punctuation purposes. You're lying your ass off, okay? Somebody need to say it. Just stop. You that starving for attention? And no clue whatsoever to the potential repercussions. Owners looking at it. This why we paying them $30 million? This is what we got to deal with? See why? Listen, it's the equivalent of brothers and sisters looking at each other when somebody steps out of pocket and just embarrasses us. We go to see why I don't hang with y'all? As my boy Jeff would say, see, that's why I don't hang with y'all. It's nonsense. Nonsense. Just inexcusable stuff. And you, John Gruden, and you're going to sit up there and okay it. So in other words, because he's sitting up there and looking like a fool, you're going to co-sign it. God forbid one of your players come to you complaining about Antonio Brown. You ain't going to stand up for them either. This stuff is hard to take, man. This stuff is hard to take. You sign a contract. You honor your contract. There is never, ever, ever an excuse to not show up to work when you've committed to doing so. They ain't asking him to put on a skirt. They ain't asking him to do something that's going to compromise his manhood. He signed an NFL contract. Did you read it? Did you read it? And on top of it all, the advent of technology has elevated exponentially to the point where the NFL has outlawed his kind of helmet, and they have better, safer helmets. By all accounts. But you don't like it. So you get your agent involved, and you hire an attorney. Did you take them up in the balloon, too? The balloon that you flew in on for training camp? Y'all can sit up there and shove this kind of stuff aside. It's hard for me to take. It really, really is. It's just, I have no patience for this. Because I'm going to be honest with you, I'm going to be straight up and down with y'all. It affects us as black people. I'm going to say it. Somebody else ain't going to say it. I'm going to say it. You cannot use stuff like this to take the kind of positions that Antonio Brown has taken. Not this. The battle scars, the challenges that we face every day in corporate America and beyond, you cannot sit up there and compromise the fight that takes place every day when you are black for something like this. This is embarrassing. And oh, by the way, Ben Roethlisberger, Mike Tomlin, Juju Smith-Schuster, they've never looked better. Because no matter what truth may have been attached to Antonio Brown's words, who think about that right now with the way he acted? Got a lawyer involved and threatening to retire and forfeit $30 million because you got to wear the same helmet that 2,000 other people wear. That was Straight Talk Wireless. Everything for less. Only at Walmart. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. We'll get to your phone calls and more in a minute. As you can tell, I'm officially back from vacation. I was supposed to be in a better mood until I talked to a bunch of people about this idiotic situation, fiasco that's taking place before our very eyes involving Antonio Brown. Just get on my damn nerves. This situation, it's ridiculous. Back with more of your calls in a minute. By the way, when you're hiring, you don't want to waste time sorting through dozens of irrelevant resumes. You want an efficient way to get to a short list of quality.
This is New York, and Pat Shurmur came from a place in Minnesota where even when things were going well, you weren't going to get criticized like this. So, yeah, I'd be a little raw too, but let's be frank. He's going to save any of the smug that comes out for David Gettleman. That's the press conference I wanted to see today for a guy that has every step of the way throughout this Giants offseason told us, you need to trust me on this. I know more than what you guys know on the outside looking in. And he does. He absolutely sees more on that inside, but that doesn't mean we have to take every decision at face value because, quite frankly, everything we've been told ends up pretty much going opposite. So that's the press conference I'm looking for, and that's where I expect the smug.
But you can't have it today. I'm not even sure you can have it at the end of the year. You can't have that press conference until like 5 years from now. We're not gonna know for years whether this was the right pick, Mike.
I mean, listen, we can say that, but after year one with Sam Darnold on the other side of town in New York with the Jets, we were already having the conversation around, well, you're seeing early returns of the idea that the Giants made a mistake taking Saquon Barkley at number 2 overall, whether he goes on to a Hall of Fame career or not.
I firmly believe that. And I think the Giants are going to rue the day that they did not take Sam Darnold. That's my opinion. But I'm not going to hang on the rim and say I was right based on Sam's performance last year. I mean, it takes a long time to establish that you were the right pick. When you take somebody 6th overall, you're talking about perennial Pro Bowl. You're talking about franchise quarterback. You're talking about conversation for the Hall of Fame before you could start hanging on the rim. Not 5 for 5 in a preseason game against the Jets' second defense.
Don, the way the world goes right now, though, especially in the NFL, I think you kind of have to know a lot sooner than that. When we're talking about what a financial burden is, when you have to make the decision whether or not you're going to extend these guys later on, you have to know to an extent. When you're talking about the jobs, not only for the head coaches, but in a lot of cases now, the GMs that get turned over a lot quicker if you don't see the early returns that at least indicate you're right. We won't be able to know if he's a Hall of Famer. We won't be able to know if he even wins a Super Bowl probably by the time these decisions get made. But you got to show something, and I feel like that's something of saying, all right, at the very least, we have one of the 16 best, the top half best quarterbacks in the NFL, justifies taking a dude at 6.
And then there are narcissist divas, and that is what Antonio Brown is.
Antonio Brown just wants to make a big deal about himself on Hard Knocks.
The Pittsburgh Steelers look genius because this guy is certifiable. He's going to bypass $30 million guaranteed because of a helmet. We're talking about legitimate crazy pills.
At the end of the day, you trying to fight this fight is like trying to use Instagram on a flip phone.
So much drama in the LBC, it's kind of hard being Snoop.
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line.
Come on, y'all. This is Stephen A. Smith Show. Kick that music, please. I need that beat. Oh, Snoop Dogg in the house. Welcome back to Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. By the way, the Stephen A. Smith Show is being brought to you by Barbasol. Hey, sports fans, Barbasol is offering you a chance to score big when you join the Barbasol Shave Club. Grab your premium starter kit for just $1.99 today and code SHAVE at Barbasol.com. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. This is my issue. You know, and let me transition. Why do you think Jerry Jones is hesitant to pay Ezekiel Elliott? He's a two-time lead in Russia 2 of the last 3 years. 322 carries last year. 304 carries last year. 322 carries his rookie year. Why do you think Jerry Jones is hesitant to pay him? Yes, he's negotiating with Dak. Yes, he doesn't like being pressed against the wall the way that Ezekiel Elliott is trying to press him against the wall. All of that is true. But you know what the biggest reason is, ladies and gentlemen? The biggest reason is that Jerry Jones is hesitant to pay him because he knows how he's living. Suspended 6 games. Had to get called up to the commissioner's office just again. I have to be able to trust you. Do you find it a tad bit odd, ladies and gentlemen, that even though Ezekiel Elliott can't get Jerry Jones and them to offer him the contract he covets, that reportedly Dak Prescott just turned down $30 million a year? Now, we don't know the particulars. We don't know how much guaranteed money that is. We don't know. We don't know that. But here's the reality. Even though we don't know how much guaranteed dollars it is, the fact of the matter is they're talking to Dak Prescott about $30 million per. Why are they doing that? You know why they're doing that, ladies and gentlemen? They're doing that because Dak Prescott hasn't missed a game. He's played in all 48 games of his career. 3 years in the league, started every game, all 48. He's healthy. He's a class citizen. He's a leader. He's dependable. He's reliable, which means he's trustworthy. That's what this is about. To everybody out here in this world, and this is the part that really, really gets to me. And again, I'm going to wear my blackness on my sleeve. But I'm talking about us. calling one another out the way it's appropriate to do so because it's necessary. This is not a white thing, not a racism thing. You got to know how to act. You can't get your money and then think you get to do what you want to do while you got your hands out for somebody else's money. You can't do that. You got to capitulate in some capacity. You got to show that you're worthy. And by the way, by worthiness, it doesn't just involve your on-court or on-field performance. If you're cancerous, if you're unreliable, if you're untrustworthy, if you're undependable, you don't get to get paid like that. When you demand money, there's two things that you got to bring to the table: value and trust. My value is determined by my performance. My trust is about your ability to rely on me to continue to show up and do my job. Never in my wildest dreams did I believe that a day would come where I'm looking at Antonio Brown and questioning whether or not he's reliable. I can't believe it. This is some inexcusable stuff. Ezekiel Elliot ain't no surprise there. Now, getting back to Dak Prescott, my brother. Don't know the particulars, don't know the guaranteed dollars. We know that Carson Wentz is guaranteed over $107 million. We know Russell Wilson is guaranteed over $107 million. We got that. Big Ben Roethlisberger got some guaranteed, making $34 million this year. We got all of that. Shoot. Kirk Cousins, 28, guaranteed every penny. And we constantly lament the state of affairs with the NFL and its Players Association because we talk about player contracts are not guaranteed. And then we look at somebody like a Tom Brady and seeing how he's getting treated by New England to such a degree. And you know what I realize? It ain't about the Players Association. It's about the players. If Kirk Cousins could get $84 million in guaranteed money, what the hell are y'all doing settling for less? What the hell has he done to earn $84 million in guarantees? But he got it. Which means if people are getting less, because they're settling for less. And that's on them. But Dak Prescott, I can understand why the Dallas Cowboys may be a bit reticent to make sure his money matches Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz is asked to do more. It's not a matter of Carson Wentz being better, even though when healthy, he has looked better than Dak Prescott in terms of his ability to throw the football. But Carson Wentz is not healthy all the time, which means that you can't rely on him to be there because he hasn't played in one playoff game for the Philadelphia Eagles over the last 2 years, including 2 years ago when they went on their Super Bowl run. That's why Nick Foles is starting quarterback in Jacksonville. Because the reality of the situation is very, very simple. Carson Wentz was asked to do more. Alshon Jeffries, Nelson Aguilar, Zach Ertz last season. Now you got Deshaun Jackson. He ain't think about running the football that much, even though they got Jordan Howard from Chicago. But let me tell you something. When you look at the Dallas Cowboys, everything has been predicated on Ezekiel Elliott, which is the justification for the Dallas Cowboys to try and shortchange Dak Prescott. I don't know if they should or would get away with it, but it's justification. So it's going to be very, very interesting. We shall see. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. To the phones we go. Brandon, you're live with Stephen A. Talk to me.
Yo, what's up, Stephen A?
What's up?
Now, Antonio Brown is he's really bugging me out because we already know he's a great player. He probably tracks the ball with the best of them in the history of the game, and the numbers he puts up is on a Jerry Rice status.
Okay.
That's not questionable at all. But some of the things that he's starting to do is stuff that we didn't even see T.O. do, and T.O. got hammered. A lot of the stuff that T.O. was complaining about and stuff like that, for the most part, had to do with stuff that was on the field pertaining to football. It wasn't big personality clashes, with the exception of Donovan McNabb. But for the most part, it's just T.O. It was straight ball. Everything Antonio Brown is doing is he's not going to get in on the first ballot the way they do Hall of Fame, the way they do the votes.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like he's really damaging himself.
Antonio Brown is damaging himself, without question. Without question. And stop lying. You know, good damn well you ain't walking away from $30 million. Stop lying. Stop lying. Just making a ruckus or nothing. Listen, helmets are important. I know that. But they're saying, listen, safety of the game matters. They ain't trying to, dole out billion-dollar lawsuits and all of this stuff and deal with all of that because they didn't do everything they can to elevate the safety of its players. They're not trying to deal with that. And he's a part of that. Now he's talking about leaving. Come on, man. I ain't got time. I really, really don't. I really, really don't. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. Back with more of the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio in a minute.
Antonio Brown just wants to make a big deal about himself on Hard Knocks and make this a bunch of drama.
The Pittsburgh Steelers look genius because this guy is certified.
I just think the problem with running backs are their running backs. You do not pay running backs. You just don't. They don't have long careers, and they don't affect the game the way they used to. You pay edge pass rushers. You pay the guys that protect the quarterback, the tackles, and now sometimes the guards. And, of course, you pay the quarterbacks. You don't pay the running backs. This happened to Bell last year. It's happening to Ezekiel now. I'm just wondering, Mike, though, is this the outlier? Are the Cowboys the outlier because the success that Dak has had has been attached to Elliott? And is this where you kind of break the tradition and say, I don't like paying running backs, but does Jerry Jones at the end of the day say, the way my team is structured, I have no choice but to pay him?
Yeah, I think that's just it. The last part you said there is the focal point to me is structure, it's strategy, it's what is my team built to you? Because, yeah, we hear all the football analytics community that talks about the strategy in football that would be ideal. The rules in this league are built for passing the football. The problem is the team you've got in Dallas isn't necessarily built for that, at least not in a way that's proven. If Kellen Moore comes out and lights up the league as another one of these innovative offensive coordinators, it could be a different conversation a year from now. But the way that you have been structured and the strategy you've put in place as the Dallas Cowboys right now, and quite frankly, the level of talent you're dealing with Ezekiel Elliott, who is not just a gifted runner, who is not just a gifted pass catcher, who's not just a gifted pass blocker. He's all three of those things in one. I think you're in a situation where you pay him now, especially when he is young. I mean, we're dealing with a guy who's in the range of 24 years old. He's in the prime of that running back career. You pay him now so you avoid the headache. You max out the Super Bowl window because that's what you're built to do now. You're not built to be Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. You're not built to be Tom Brady and the Patriots. You have made decisions as the Dallas Cowboys that have landed you here, and now you got to reckon with them.
And this is why they're the outlier. And they're 28-12 with him, 4-4 without him. Now, I don't have it off the top of my head, but the Steelers were a very successful team, not just last year, even though they missed the playoffs, but they were above 500 without Bell. And when Bell was either suspended or hurt, when he was under contract and playing for them, they had a winning record.
Wideout Antonio Brown is filing a grievance against the NFL so he can use his preferred helmet.
This has been an issue since the start of the summer.
This Antonio Brown story is absolutely bizarre.
Now it gets weirder in the sense that he has actually told the team that he will not play football again unless he gets to wear his old helmet.
We like to, get the party started.
What we're learning and what we ought to know is Antonio Brown is problems, and it wasn't Pittsburgh's fault.
Who would have thought that we could have all this over a helmet?
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guest on the
have a question for you regarding the Cowboys, like you were just discussing.
Yeah.
Obviously, Ezekiel Elliot has had a lot of problems on and off the field, mostly off the field.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that's going to play a factor in discussing his contract. And I'm curious on how much you think he should be getting paid, obviously. And then
No, I think Ezekiel Elliott should be paid as one of the top 3 running backs in football. My only issue is that for me personally, I think he needs to wait his turn. Dak Prescott is the priority right now. Ezekiel Elliott has 2 years left on his deal, plus he could be franchised. I don't blame him for trying to exercise his leverage, but you know what? Perhaps if you were a model citizen and then conduct yourself and find yourself in knucklehead situations on occasion, you'd be in a more stronger position from a negotiating standpoint.
Do you think he should be getting paid in between Todd Gurley and Le'Veon Bell?
Somewhere around there, possibly better. In terms of his production warrants it. His off-the-field behavior does not.
Absolutely. Then my final question is, we're really not talking about Amari Cooper too much, obviously, because he's he's still over here. He's going to training camp. He's laying low. What do you think he should be getting paid? Because I've heard, obviously, around $18 million, which I just don't think is that.
Who is this?
I just heard it on NFL Live.
I said who? Who are you talking about?
Oh, Amari Cooper, my bad.
Yeah. Well, he's going to pursue about that much because some of these number 1 wide receivers are getting paid around those dollars. And then when you consider what your cat from New Orleans just got and what Julio Jones and others are going to command, Amari Cooper's going to be in a position to get a little bit less. It's not about his $18 million. It's about the fact that others are going to get over 20. And that's what this is about. So that's what you got to pay attention to and just go from there. But I got to get on out of here for right now. I got some bills to pay, but I'll be back to start off hour number 2 with your calls and more. Plus, Victor Cruz, former Giants wide receiver, he'll be on the show with us as well. Stick around. Hour number 2 up next with Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News.
From coast to coast, the Stephen A. Smith Show starts right now.
ESPN Radio and ESPN News coming at you as I love to do every weekday. Number to call up as always is 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Drivers who switch and save pay an average of $6.99 less per year. Plus, the satisfying crunch of Nature Valley Crunchy Bars can keep your family going, which means more outside fun for you. And with the whole grain oats and real delicious honey, it's really tasty too. Nature Valley Oats and Honey Crunchy Bars. Ladies and gentlemen, before I get back to the calls, let me just say this. I want to take a moment to express my sincere and heartfelt condolences to the Pittsburgh Steelers organization, to guys like Larry Fitzgerald and Hines Ward and others, to members in the NFL community who were close to Coach Darryl Drake, and of course, by all accounts, his wonderful, wonderful family. My heartfelt condolences goes out to them. Wide receivers coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers over the last couple of years, an assistant coach in the National Football League for 16 years. Darryl Drake, Steelers wide receivers coach, passed away yesterday at the age of 62. Cause of death was not immediately known. People speculated. I don't know whether it was a heart attack or I'm not sure what happened. But he passed away at the age of 62. He was a coach. He was a close friend of Coach Mike Tomlin. That's what Mike Tomlin described him as. along with saying an amazing husband, father, and grandfather. Difficult to put into words the grief of our entire family is going through right now. Steelers had canceled their Sunday practice at St. Vincent College in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. First Take, a television show on ESPN with Max Kellerman and Molly Curum every weekday from 10 a.m. to noon. We were scheduled to go to the Steelers training camp this Thursday. We were going to be in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, talking to Coach Tomlin and everybody else from Steelers training camp. That was canceled as well, obviously, for obvious reasons and appropriately so. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. Life is short. And, he had 3 daughters, from my understanding, along with several grandchildren. Wonderful wife, Sheila, as well. Going far, far, far too soon. Condolences to the family. Rest in peace. Rest in peace, Coach Darryl Drake. Wide receivers coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers, passed away yesterday at age 62. 888-SAY-ESPN's number to call up. That's 888-729-3776. You're listening live to Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio, ESPN News, and, of course, ESPN Radio on Sirius XM, Channel 82. Let's go back to the calls. Let's go to Joe in Queens. You're live with Stephen A. What's up, Joe?
What's going on, Mr. Smith?
How are you, man?
I'm glad that you're back, man. I hate it when you're not in the office.
No, I'm back. I'm back now. Let's go.
All right. So quick question. I mean, just to formulate an opinion from what you said earlier, I think you should have said you can't give certain people money, because I'm pretty sure if you gave like a Larry Fitzgerald,
Whoa. I wasn't stereotyping. When I'm talking about certain people, I'm talking about their behavior. I'm certainly, I'm making the argument that most people know how to damn act, regardless of their ethnicity. But it's just that when you battle the way that black folks have had to battle throughout history, and then you find yourself in this kind of position, it's incredibly important that you conduct yourself a certain way, because it gives folks who don't want to pay you an excuse to try and stereotype many. And that's what you have to guard against, not just think about yourself. That's what I'm saying. Go ahead.
Got you. So that they don't say, hey, this is why we don't give you money. But if you act accordingly, they don't have nothing to give.
Right.
I got you. That's all I just wanted to know. I was just thinking to myself, Julio got a restructured contract. You don't see him in the news. I'm pretty sure if you gave DeAndre Hopkins big money, he wouldn't be in the news. I feel like it's just certain individuals. And also, the majority of the NFL is black.
Well, listen, and again, well, you got to remember something, Joe. We can't. You're a smart guy. You live in this society. You recognize without question, the uphill battles that minorities in this country have had to fight through and battle. My point is, you can't be one of those individuals that breaks through that proverbial glass ceiling and then act like you don't have no damn sense and think that's going to help. That doesn't. That's all I'm saying.
And act like they don't care either.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. It's all a part of it. Not knowing, not caring, et cetera, et cetera. You have more responsibility. Appreciate the call, Joe. Thank you so much. Carlton, my man Carlton, it's been a long time. What's up, buddy? How are you?
I'm okay. I tried to tell you all last season,
You
Stephen
did.
A. But
You did.
Let me part the clouds, those dark, stormy clouds, and send a ray of sunshine your way. Stephen A., Antonio Brown is not on the Steelers this coming season. He's not your problem. He's John Gruden's problem.
Well, as a Steelers fan, you're absolutely right. But more importantly than that, I just view his behavior in this particular situation as being completely egregious and unnecessary, and that's why I'm speaking on it.
And here's the real problem from my perspective, Stephen A., with this Antonio Brown situation. It's one player acting up again. Last year, this was made to be a black-white issue in the NFL. It honestly was, on all the sports stations. It was all the favoritism of Ben Roethlisberger versus poor, abused Antonio Brown. When Antonio Brown skipped out after Game 2 because he was upset that Juju Smith-Schuster Juju Schuster caught, I think it was 13 catches for 121 yards, and he only got 67 yards against the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yep.
Who was he stiffing when he didn't show up for practice? Was it the majority of the African-American players on the Steelers, or was it Ben Roethlisberger that he was stiffing? When he called Ryan Clark and Uncle Tom, was he stiffing some white guy, or was he stiffing an African-American?
That's true.
When he didn't show up in Week 17, when they needed that win to have a shot of making the playoffs, was he stiffing mostly his African-American teammates, or was he stiffing Ben Roethlisberger? When he slandered Juju Schuster after the season was over, was he stiffing Ben Roethlisberger, or was he stiffing an African-American? This was never about white versus black, Stephen A. Never. It was about one self-absorbed guy who basically tells his teammates, and now it's his Oakland Raiders teammates, the majority of whom are African-American, to kick rocks. I'm going to do what I want to do, even when the Oakland Raiders restructured his contract, giving him that guaranteed $30 million. They could have just taken the Steelers contract, which had 1 year left. No, they gave him premium money. They showed trust in this guy, and this guy is basically giving him the middle finger right now.
Well, that's the whole point.
What's going on,
That's exactly what's going on. And you said it in a slightly different way than me, but our message is the same today. And I think that's exactly what comes down to. And you talk about the folks that he's stiffing, you're talking about him thinking about himself instead of the collective whole and the kind of potential damage this could ultimately do down the line, because you can't have people emulating these kind of actions. You can't have them duplicating such transgressions. It's just ridiculous. When you're talking about getting $30 million in guaranteed dollars, Carlton, and walking away because of a helmet issue that the league has warned you about for 5 years, that every other player in the National Football League has capitulated to but you, it makes no sense, Carlton. It's inexcusable.
Exactly right. And it's like you say, it's behavior that outside of pro sports players, if you emulate it, it's going to get you fired, justifiably so.
Yeah.
It's going to get you fired.
We don't disagree today.
And so it's really, really bad. One additional point on a different subject. Again, an issue that became a black-white issue for some insane reason. The argument about Dwayne Haskins versus Daniel Jones, and the Giants making a supposed mistake by drafting Daniel Jones ahead of Dwayne Haskins. Of course, you saw Haskins throw the 2 picks in his first game, and Jones go 5 for 5 with a touchdown and look really good. Obviously, early days. But here's the point that the Max Kellermans of the world and every other analyst I've seen on ESPN do not understand. Do you know how many Duke players are right now from last year's team, the 2018 Duke players, are on NFL rosters?
I do not know.
Now.
I do not know that.
That's 0 besides Daniel Jones. There was a wide receiver, Roming, that got cut by the Redskins yesterday, but he was undrafted. He wasn't even drafted. Do you know how many Ohio State players from last year's team?
I can't even imagine it.
13, Stephen A. 9 of them on offense, including 3 of the wide receivers that Haskins was throwing to, and a 4th guy who decided to go back would have been in the NFL if he didn't decide to go back to the Ohio State. For his final season, he had so much more talent around him to throw to, whereas Daniel Jones had nobody who's an NFL caliber player to throw to.
Come on, Carlton, but that's one preseason game, Carlton. Come on now.
No, I don't disagree with you there, but those statistics in terms of who Daniel Jones was surrounded with at Duke versus who Dwayne Haskins was surrounded with at Ohio State is truth. I mean, those wide receivers are speed burners. In the combines, they set all sorts of records and so forth. The Ohio State receivers, that's the difference. So we're going to have to see, if he can, duplicate it even up, basically. When we're both working with pro receivers.
I got you. Carlton, appreciate you, buddy. Thank you so much, man. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Welcome, and it's great to be back, by the way. It's just great to be back. Great to listen to Carlton as well. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. You're listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Got some breaking news for everybody here, something that you may very, very well need to know. If you recall, the NCAA came down with a rule a little over a week ago that caused an uproar. It's new criteria for agents interested in representing players testing the NBA draft waters. You were required to have a bachelor's degree, a National Basketball Players Association certification for at least 3 consecutive years, professional liability insurance, and completion of an in-person exam taken in early November at the NCAA office in Indianapolis. Rich Paul, that's what the rule was dubbed by LeBron James because he felt like, this rule was geared against somebody like a Rich Paul because his clientele continues to grow every day. The founder and CEO of Clutch Sports Group, that is, Rich Paul, LeBron's boy. But Rich Paul had spoken out against it. And when he was quoted, he said the harmful consequences of this decision will ricochet onto others who are trying to break in, Paul said in an op-ed for The Athletic. NCAA executives are once again preventing young people from less prestigious backgrounds, and often people of color, from working in the system they continue to control. In this case, the people being locked out are kids who aspire to be an agent and work in the NBA and do not have the resources, opportunity, or desire to get a 4-year degree. I actually support requiring 3 years of experience before representing a kid testing the market. I can even get behind passing a test. However, requiring a 4-year degree accomplishes only one thing: systematically excluding those who come from a world where college is unrealistic. Does anyone really believe a 4-year degree is what separates an ethical person from a con artist? Right? And then it went on to say, though he does not have a bachelor's degree, Paul Clutch Sports represents LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Ben Simmons, Draymond Green, John Wall, and other various NBA players. Well, that was Rich Paul with his op-ed in The Athletic. Okay? And now news has come down. Breaking news. Over the last few minutes, the NCAA has amended its controversial agent certification requirements. A bachelor's degree is no longer required to represent players testing the process as long as the agent is certified by the National Basketball Players Association. So they basically taken out the bachelor's degree requirement. Here's what a lot of y'all were missing. So many people were talking about the NCAA. But did you know that the NCAA at the time only took on a recommendation of the group led by Condoleezza Rice? Y'all didn't know that, did you? Y'all didn't know that. Condoleezza Rice, David Robinson, Grant Hill, and others. Okay? That's what happened. So they originally gave the recommendation to the NCAA, and the NCAA followed it. Why is that relevant? Because when everybody was in an uproar, people were tinging on, it being racially biased, including LeBron James. And 3 prominent black people were on the committee that made the recommendation to the NCAA, and nobody brought that up. Condoleezza Rice, Grant Hill, David Robinson. And the whole purpose of it was to try to protect players looking to enter the pros who may not be getting the proper level of advice, and as a result had to guard themselves against that kind of stuff. Remember, the group came together because of the FBI's exposure of widespread bribery, fraud, and cheating in college basketball. They were trying to clean up the sport. So they formed a group with people of high accomplishments and high integrity. And it was led by Condoleezza Rice. It's a 14-person commission. Grant Hill, former star Duke, David Robinson, former NBA star, Coach Mike Montgomery and John Thompson III. Former Florida Athletic Director Jeremy Foley, current Ohio State Athletic Director Gene Smith. So they made concessions, they ultimately made modifications, and they took out that ruling. Because basically some people don't have access to college, contrary to what you believe, and some people ain't interested in going to college for a 4-year degree. And sometimes it ain't even necessary. You know why? Because even though you might know what you're doing, that doesn't mean you don't have a lawyer in tow that you employ to go through the legalese of matters while you sit there as an agent. And why is that important? Because if you're a player, you might not trust a lawyer, but you might trust a Rich Paul. You might trust an Aaron Goodwin. You might trust a Bill Duffy, even though these are high, accomplished individuals. And so as a result of that, they're the ones that bring in others unless they can do it themselves. And those are the individuals that the players trust. Just something to know. Hunter, real. Man, stop right there. Stop right there.
All right.
Didn't you tell my producers you wanted to call about the Rich Paul rule?
Yeah.
Then I'm not talking about the Knicks right now. Get to the Rich Paul rule.
All right. I think the Rich Paul rule was kind of bullcrap because it's trying to limit people from what they want to do. Because I mean, if a player wants them to represent them, it's their choice at the end of the day.
That's true too. But what did you think about the modification that I just announced that the NCAA just made? Where they're not requiring you to have a bachelor's degree.
I think that's a good idea. I think it's the certification from the NBA is a little extreme. I think the test is a good idea though.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you there. The test is fine. Some of the other stipulations are fine as long as you omit the 4-year bachelor's degree requirement. I got no problem with that. I got to get on out of here, Hunter. I appreciate the call. Thank you so much. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. Listen, at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. You're the NCAA. You know, you got to be mindful. Most of these athletes in college football and college basketball, which are the two generating sports, or revenue-generating sports in college sports, you got a lot of African Americans in those sports. And whether you like it or not, even though you lean on others, the reality of the situation is that sometimes you have athletes of African American descent who want to hire African Americans as their representation. And you don't want to do anything to impede that. 888-SAY-ESPN, it's 888-729-3776. Up next, the one and only Victor Cruz, former Giants wide receiver, present NFL analyst for ESPN. He'll be up with yours truly right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News.
ESPN serves sports fans anytime, anywhere. ESPN Plus, more sports, more leagues, more teams, more ESPN. Download the ESPN app or visit ESPN.com today.
This is New York, and Pat Shurmur came from a place in Minnesota where even when things were going well, you weren't going to get criticized like this. So, yeah, I'd be a little raw too, but let's be frank. He's going to save any of the smug that comes out for David Gettleman. That's the press conference I wanted to see today for a guy that has every step of the way throughout this Giants offseason told us, you need to trust me on this. I know more than what you guys know on the outside looking in. And he does. He absolutely sees more on that inside, but that doesn't mean we have to take every decision at face value because, quite frankly, everything we've been told ends up pretty much going opposite. So that's the press conference I'm looking for, and that's where I expect the smug.
But you can't have it today. I'm not even sure you can have it at the end of the year. You can't have that press conference until like 5 years from now. We're not gonna know for years whether this was the right pick, Mike.
I mean, listen, we can say that, but after year one with Sam Darnold on the other side of town in New York with the Jets, we were already having the conversation around, well, you're seeing early returns of the idea that the Giants made a mistake taking Saquon Barkley at number 2 overall, whether he goes on to a Hall of Fame career or not.
That. I firmly believe that, and I think the Giants are going to rue the day that they did not take Sam Darnold. That's my opinion, but I'm not going to hang on the rim and say I was right based on Sam's performance last year. I mean, it takes a long time to establish that you were the right pick. When you take somebody 6th overall, you're talking about perennial Pro Bowl. You're talking about franchise quarterback. You're talking about conversation for the Hall of Fame before you could start hanging on the rim. Not 5 for 5 in a preseason game against the Jets' second defense.
Don, the way the world goes right now, though, especially in the NFL, I think you kind of have to know a lot sooner than that. When we're talking about what a financial burden is, when you have to make the decision whether or not you're going to extend these guys later on, you have to know to an extent. When you're talking about the jobs, not only for the head coaches, but in a lot of cases now, the GMs that get turned over a lot quicker if you don't see the early returns that at least indicate you're right. We won't be able to know if he's a Hall of Famer. We won't be able to know if he even wins a Super Bowl probably by the time these decisions get made, but you got to show something, and I feel like that's something of saying, all right, at the very least, we have one of the 16 best, the top half best quarterbacks in the NFL, justifies taking a dude at 6.
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on The Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line.
Welcome back to Stephen A. Smith Show, hour number 2 of the Stephen A. Smith Show. Actually, this is beyond hour number 2 of the Stephen A. Smith Show right here on ESPN Radio and ESPN News. My privilege to have my next guest, NFL analyst for ESPN, former standout wide receiver for the New York Giants. I still miss the salsa. I'm talking about the one and only Victor Cruz. What's going on, man? How are you?
What's going on, Stephen A? Thanks for having me.
Listen, are you laughing at me like everybody else because I tore my rotator cuff? Are you laughing at me like everybody else?
No, I'm not one to laugh, man. I know that injury bug and how it can have you laid up and you know, and not moving for a little while. So I'm not one to laugh at all.
I appreciate that, but I got to tell you something right now. I got a few things to get into it with you. There's something that I'm not laughing about. This Antonio Brown fiasco, and that to me is exactly what it is, threatening to retire unless he's allowed to wear the helmet that he wants to wear. The NFL said he's been wearing this helmet for the last 10 years. It's been prohibited, by their folks, and as a result, he's not going to be allowed to wear this helmet. What do you make of this whole situation involving Antonio Brown?
Like, look, I understand all football players. We're creatures of habit, right? We understand, you know, we've had the same things for years, and once we like it, once we love it, we stick with it, we keep it, we cherish it forever, we wear it all the time, especially on that football field. And it's more importantly, if we're successful, we become superstitious to the point where this helmet is the helmet that stays with me when I won X amount of Super Bowls or when I won X amount of games or I had X amount of catches. So we developed this, you know, this mode of thinking about all these different equipment issues that led to our success. So I understand that part of it.
Okay.
The other part of it, obviously, for Antonio Brown is understanding that the league's trying to get better. The league is trying to get safer. The league understands that athletes and, most importantly, defensive players, all players are getting bigger, faster, and stronger, and they have to accommodate the equipment to these players. And that's what Antonio Brown has to realize is like, okay, we get it. You have to get used to trying another helmet. You have to get used to, you know, breaking it in and understanding that you have to evolve with the game. And I think that's the part that he's missing is that the game is going to evolve, and that helmet has not evolved. I understand the sentimental value, but the game has to evolve.
This is the thing that drives me crazy, Victor Cruz. There's like 30 different options that the National Football League has for Antonio Brown. And on top of it all, according to what I've been told, these football players have been informed for the last 5 years that this transition was coming. Everybody knew. And so you got 2,000 plus players in the National Football League, and this dude is the only dude making this kind of a big stink over it. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I remember obviously a few short years ago, I was in the league as well, and we have the meeting every year around training camp about the helmets that are going to be good for this year and the helmets that aren't good anymore that you may have worn a year ago. So you had to have created a plan knowing that this helmet was potentially going to be banned in the next year, knowing that all the helmets that you may have seen in the years prior were getting banned every single year. You knew yours was going to be next. So you had to come up with a plan. You had to come up with trying one of those different helmets. And I know it's probably a swagger thing too. Some of those helmets don't look as good with your jersey as they do, you know, as the one that you're used to, as the one that you're used to being photographed in your videos and your Instagram account and all of that. I get it. But you had to have come up with a plan knowing that this helmet wasn't going to be legal anymore. And he failed to do so. And now he's using the extreme taking it to the extreme as a counterpart, as a reaction to the news that he just found.
What do you think the impetus behind all of this is? Is this about Hard Knocks, on being on HBO, drawing more attention to himself? After all, this is the dude that flew into training camp in a balloon, for crying out loud. Is this something else? What do you think this is about?
I think it has a little bit to do with that. I mean, obviously, I'd be remiss to say that he's, that the Oakland Raiders are on Hard Knocks and that they're going to be, looking for content, and who's the better person to create some content at the wide receiver, a.k.a. diva position, other than Antonio Brown. So I do take that into consideration. That could also be part of it, too. But I also think he's serious. And if you go back to his sit-down that he had a few months ago, and he's talking about how he doesn't need the game and how he's happy to retire now, and that he's set in all these different areas, all these different regards monetarily and things of that nature, I understand. So you got to also take him seriously by his word and saying that he won't play if he doesn't have this helmet. But I do think some of it's just a little bit of fluff. I think it's a little bit of fluff.
Hold on, Victor. You really think that we supposed to take him seriously when he went through all of that stuff he went through in Pittsburgh to ultimately get $30 million guaranteed from the Oakland Raiders? You really, really believe that we're supposed to believe he's going to walk away from $30 million because of this helmet issue?
I don't think so, especially because of, I know there's some rules or implications that if he does not play, he'd have to give some of that money back. And that is, I know he's not in the business of giving any money back. So I know we will see him on that football field. What helmet will he be wearing when he does get on that football field will be the question.
Victor Cruz right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Let's stick with Antonio Brown over something before we drop this subject. How are we supposed to view him now, considering all the turmoil that existed in Pittsburgh, where we looked at Big Ben Roethlisberger, we heard what Le'Veon Bell heard about Big Ben Roethlisberger, said about Big Ben Roethlisberger, and what have you. You saw Antonio Brown go after Juju Smith-Schuster, etc. In light of this, how do you believe all of this makes him look in the end?
I think it may look just a little bit sensitive in certain areas, and especially the whole Juju Smith-Schuster thing. I didn't really like that per se because as a receiver, there's a brotherhood, and he was posting things about when when Juju DM'd him, trying to work out with him and do, and just get better at his craft. I think things like that should stay hidden. Things like that should stay within the wide receiver football brotherhood and of that nature. But I just think he's in a place where, if he wants to kibosh and he wants to end all of these rumors and not even rumors, or all this perception of what people think he is, and especially his exit from Pittsburgh, he has to change some of these narratives. And obviously this helmet situation doesn't help, and the way he's going about this helmet situation doesn't help as well. So I think it finds him a little bit sensitive in terms of he's probably looking at this as if the league is out for him, or they're changing rules for him, skewing things for him because, of who he is or the character or the things that he may have put out there. And I think he might be seeing it the wrong way or taking it the wrong way. But I do think I think the word for Antonio Brown right now is just a little bit sensitive.
I'm going to put it on Front Street. Listen, I'm a black man hosting a national radio show, okay? And I'm not going to be apologetic about where I stand on this particular issue. I think that when you are in the position of that Antonio Brown is in, and you choose something like this to threaten to retire, and you're so extra and excessive with it, I think it's a bad look. And I think it's the kind of look that incentivizes owners to look at the Players Association and say, you see why we fight so hard over giving you guys this money? We're supposed to be able to trust people. Whether it's Ezekiel Elliot in one situation or something like this in another. These are the kind of headaches we don't feel like we should have to deal with when we're doling out millions upon millions of dollars to players. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I agree to that. I think we have to, if we want to see a change in the way, anything that we want from the players' perspective, whether it's, guaranteeing our contracts or seeing differences in money, obviously, as the NFL players continue to look at the NBA every offseason and see how the monies are flowing and realizing that the NFL isn't the same ballgame. But we have to change things within our own league as players. We have to change the way we go about things. They have to change the way that, they respond to certain scenarios and certain things that go on within the culture of the NFL. That's the only way we're going to see change. That's the only way that things are going to flow in our favor moving forward, if we understand the things that are negative about us and change those things and change those narratives so that we can be better, so that we can start seeing some changes in our, go our way as players, so that the PA has some leverage going into these negotiations about how things should change and things of that nature. So I do think as players in the NFL, we have to change the narrative for these players, for ourselves, so that holistically we can start getting to a different place and a better place, so that the PA and the owners respect us and agree to some of these changes.
Victor Cruz right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Victor, let's transition to your old team, the New York Giants. First of all, you saw them win a game against the New York Jets, 31-22. We saw Daniel Jones complete all 5 of his passes. He's the rookie, number 6 overall pick out of Duke. He completed all 6 of his passes, played relatively well for the New York Giants. As a result, you got people raving about him, acting like, stop the presses. It's time for him to start for the New York Giants. What are your thoughts about what you saw from Daniel Jones, and how are you feeling about the fact that he was drafted as high as he was drafted at this particular moment in time?
I do from what I saw from Daniel Jones in the first game of his NFL career. I think more than just the 100%, from the field, 5 for 5 in the touchdown pass. I think it was his demeanor, how calm he was, and not getting, out of pocket, or even he barely even got excited. I think he was, taking a page off of young Eli Manning's book of just going out there, being resolved, understanding the moment, and just executing the best way he knows how. And with that being said, I do think the Giants feel justified drafting him at the 6th overall spot because of this performance that he put out there this past weekend. Now, with all that being said, I do not feel like he should be the guy at the helm starting quarterback week 1 for the Giants. I think Eli Manning has that position in a hold, but I think the Giants should be optimistic and be happy about what they have in the future in Daniel Jones, because he put together, that 5 for 5. Obviously, those are just his first 5 passes in the NFL, but more so his demeanor. I think his demeanor and the way he approached every down and every play, and he never got too high. Even when he scored a touchdown, there was no rah-rah. I think he understands where he is, and that's a great sign for the New York Giants.
Not to put you on the spot, but I must ask this question. Highlight and illuminate for me what you saw from Eli Manning over the last couple of years and where you think he is at this stage and point in his career compared to where he used to be when he was throwing you the football.
Well, I think over the years, I can only obviously speak on when I was with him. I think he's always been a neck-up quarterback. And I say neck-up because he's always been a cerebral quarterback, understanding coverages, understanding the play scheme and how they work towards those coverages, understanding pre-snap coverages to where he walks up to the line and he knows exactly where he's going with the football due to the cover that he sees before him, and he's executing at a high level. Now, I think moving forward, as he begins to, go in his latter years of football, I think he has to find different ways to keep his arm strong, to keep his velocity strong, to make sure he's still making those passes and making those accurate passes. Because as we know, the first thing to go is your strength and your overall accuracy when you get older. And now, having visited the training camp a few times during this summer, I see a different Eli. I see an Eli with a little zip on the football. I see Eli with more conviction with his passes. I see, and after talking to some of the players, some of the receivers, they're saying he's got more zip. The ball's coming in fast. The ball's coming in hot. So I anticipate, Eli Manning understands career. He's no dummy. He knows where he is. He knows he has to continue to show, improve, and change his game now as he's getting older in order to stay on that field, in order to be better. So I expect a big year out of Eli Manning, and I think he's definitely done some changes, at least hearing it out of Giants camp. He's done some changes to his work ethic and the things that he's done so he can be out there longer and not have as much wear and tear on his arm with his mechanics.
Do you think Eli Manning is in danger of losing his starting job this season?
Now, with all that being said, I've been a big advocate. If the Giants go below 500 the first month of the season, I do believe we see Daniel Jones. I mean, that's just in my brain, the way I feel about this team, the way I feel about the New York atmosphere, the New York media, as you know it. If they go below 500 the first month of the season, I do feel like Daniel Jones will walk in as his replacement come week 5.
Refresh my memory. What was your position on draft night? Did you believe that the New York Giants should have drafted Dwayne Haskins out of Ohio State, or were you cool with Daniel Jones being the first quarterback they took?
No, in that moment, I did feel like they should have taken Haskins. I felt like Haskins was the best quarterback on the board in that specific spot. But then when they took Daniel Jones, I kind of scratched my head and said, well, let me see why. And then I went back and looked up the Coach Cutcliffe and the dynamic that, the Mannings have had with Coach Cutcliffe at Duke as the head coach, and how that, how his gameplay and the way he calls games has an effect on Daniel Jones, and how he's kind of managed and groomed Daniel throughout the years to be sort of like Eli Manning, kind of have that resolve and understand that it's a next play mentality. You might not make the best play now, but let's move on to the next. And I think that's what the Giants like, is that eerie, uncanny kind of resemblance and mannerisms to Eli Manning and the mindset. And obviously, he's a smart quarterback. To go to Duke and be lead that team there, you have to have some smarts about you and have some goodwill about you. But I do understand the pick now, but in hindsight, I was scratching my head as well because I thought Haskins was the best one at the moment.
Victor Cruz, NFL analyst for ESPN, right here with Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Appreciate you, my man. Thank you so much, man. You take care of yourself, all right?
No problem.
All right.
Thank you very much. You too.
All right, no problem. One and only Victor Cruz right here with yours truly. Good to talk to him. By the way, the Stephen A. Smith Show is being brought to you by Pennzoil Synthetics, taking synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level, so make the switch.
I just think the problem with running backs are their running backs. You do not pay running backs. You just don't. They don't have long careers, and they don't affect the game the way they used to. You pay edge pass rushers. You pay the guys to protect the quarterback, the tackles, and now sometimes the guards. And, of course, you pay the quarterbacks. You don't pay the running backs. This happened to Bell last year. It's happening to Ezekiel now. I'm just wondering, Mike, though, is this the outlier? Are the Cowboys the outlier because the success that Dak has had has been attached to Elliott? And is this where you kind of break the tradition and say, I don't like paying running backs? But does Jerry Jones at the end of the day say, the way my team is structured, I have no choice but to pay him?
Yeah, I think that's just it. The last part you said there is the focal point to me is structure, it's strategy, it's what is my team built to you? Because, yeah, we hear all the football analytics community that talks about the strategy in football that would be ideal. The rules in this league are built for passing the football. The problem is the team you've got in Dallas isn't necessarily built for that, at least not in a way that's proven. If Kellen Moore comes out and lights up the league as another one of these innovative offensive coordinators, it could be a different conversation a year from now. But the way that you have been structured and the strategy you've put in place as the Dallas Cowboys right now, and quite frankly, the level of talent you're dealing with Ezekiel Elliott, who is not just a gifted runner, who is not just a gifted pass catcher, who's not just a gifted pass blocker. He's all three of those things in one. I think you're in a situation where you pay him now, especially when he is young. I mean, we're dealing with a guy who's in the range of 24 years old. He's in the prime of that running back career. You pay him now so you avoid the headache. You max out the Super Bowl window because that's what you're built to do now. You're not built to be Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. You're not built to be Tom Brady and the Patriots. You have made decisions as the Dallas Cowboys that have landed you here, and now you got to reckon with them.
And this is why they're the outlier. And they're 28-12 with him, 4-4 without him. Now, I don't have it off the top of my head, but the Steelers were a very successful team, not just last year, even though they missed the playoffs, but they were above 500 without Bell. And when Bell was either suspended or hurt, when he was under contract and playing for them, they had a winning record.
ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line.
Welcome back to Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. By the way, ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Pick from a range of coverage options with the Name Your Price tool to find a price that works for you. Thanks again to Victor Cruz for coming on the show, breaking down what he broke down about Antonio Brown and ultimately about the New York Giants situation. We also spent some time this afternoon talking about, this morning actually as well, talking about Ezekiel Elliott, talking about Dak Prescott. I'm clear about what I'm saying. I think Jerry Jones, his words about Ezekiel Elliott could definitely be misconstrued. It could definitely be, or rather seen as disrespectful. But that doesn't mean that Ezekiel Elliott doesn't deserve to be disrespected. If you're going to do what he did, getting yourself in trouble, get suspended for games, not being reliable and accountable, hell, that's what's going to happen when you're asking for millions. And Dak Prescott, mad love for Dak Prescott. And we don't know the particulars of the contract that was offered to him being around $30 million a year. Okay, we get that. So because it could be about guaranteed dollars or lack thereof. We understand that. It could be an incentive-laden contract that he ain't down with. We understand that. But if it's in the ballpark of a Carson Wentz and the rest of those top 6 quarterbacks in the National Football League, I'm talking about paid and guaranteed dollars. The Russell Wilsons, Ben Roethlisbergers, Matt Ryans of the world, stuff like that. Look, if you are Dak Prescott, you got to know, okay, you was asked to do a hell of a lot less than Carson Wentz. So you can't be fixated on getting more than Carson Wentz. That can't be your battle cry. Even though you played all 48 games, even though you haven't been injured, even though you've been in the postseason twice, to the Pro Bowl twice. The fact of the matter is having Ezekiel Elliott Be the bell cow for your franchise. Carrying 322 times as a rookie, 304 carries last year. This is what happens. $30 million a year? Dak Prescott? You sound insane for turning that down. That we don't know the particulars. But $30 million a year is $30 million a year. That's all I'm saying. Got to get on out of here. But I'm looking forward to talking to y'all tomorrow. I'll be back in 22 hours from now. Lots of stuff to get into. And NFL season is right around the corner. And oh, by the way, so is the NBA season. You heard what I told you my wish list was. An all LA Western Conference Finals. Boy, would I love that. And I'd love to be in LA for the NBA Finals as well. But that's just me. Y'all know how I roll. Y'all know how I roll. I will be talking to y'all in 22 hours from now. From LA, by the way. Until then, this is Stephen A. signing off. Peace and love, everybody.